Welcome to At the Gate, a podcast where we talk about ideas and topics to help us to live and love more like Jesus each and every day. My name is Pastor John.
Pastor Josh.
And Pastor Thomas.
Today, fellas, we're going to talk about putting our muscles to good work for God's kingdom, aka how to serve.
Well said.
Did you like that, Josh?
It was something.
Well, so we have Pastor Josh once again on the podcast. One of the many areas that you help oversee here is a lot of the serving aspects, serving opportunities, I guess, as it were. And this year, our church is focusing in on our core practice of serve. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
How we're focusing on it?
How we're focusing on it, why we're focusing on it, the importance of focusing on it.
Well, we all know that when Jesus came, he talked about he didn't come to be served, but came to serve. So we have this pristine example of what we are supposed to do and carry on within the church body. And so it's one thing that we wanted to highlight as we kind of alter every year what we focus on amongst our 5 core practices. So this year being serve. And, you know, if we look out in the congregation and see how many people are serving, there's a lot more that can be doing a lot more. So our hope is that it will light a flame so that we are all participating members within the church.
Do you think, sorry, let me rephrase that. Why do you think people don't see a need to serve? Because I'm not saying our church is prone to not serve, but I think churches across the board, you will find people who don't see a necessity to serve. They just look at it as, okay, that's taken care of, that's taken care of. Where do you think that attitude comes from?
Well, I think one, they may just not know their talents or their giftings and how God has created them. And I think a lot of times people don't really consider themselves a part of the church body. They're attenders. And I think the idea that when we realize our potential in Christ and how he's built us up and created us with our spiritual gifts, we're all part of the body and we all play a unique part of that. And when we can, there's this fulfillment inside of us. But I also think, you know, there's that old 80-10 rule, or 80-20. That's bad math. But the 80-20 rule in regards to 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. And the problem you get with that is you get a tired group of 20% that are overburdened with all the tasks. And again, if we fulfill our duties in participating in some capacity, then it alleviates that burnt out and other people, and it helps make us the church.
Yeah, I did not plan it this way, but it keeps happening where we do an episode and whatever we're talking about is exactly what we ended up talking about last night at youth group. So 1 Peter chapter 4 is what we studied last night, verse 7 through 11. And verse 10 says, verse 8 says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another, as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks is one who speaks oracles of God. Whoever serves is one who serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belonging glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. I bring that up just because it's funny talking to middle school boys. You get a different perspective a lot of the time. So we're going through this and we're talking about spiritual gifts and serving and why it's important. And most of them didn't know what spiritual gifts were. So we talked about that. You know, this is an area where God has gifted you for the purpose of serving. And so helping them to kind of understand you are a part of the church, meaning God has gifted you to serve in the church for his glory and for his kingdom. It was cool to see kind of them go like, oh, okay, like
Start to
one of
click
the
for them.
yeah, one of the kids like VBS.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Like VBS, Colton, you play on the worship team. Like it doesn't there's no limit to who that applies to.
I think there's been a big shift, especially with the young kids, and their capacity and understanding of what it means to be a part of the church. It's not a segregated two different bodies, right?
Mhm.
We are one body, and it is neat to see kids during VBS giving up their spring break in order to serve kids that are not much younger than themselves.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that my wife and I tried as we raised our kids too, of anytime either be a church work day or Heidi and I would have to, or not, we get to plant different stuff around the buildings. We'd bring the kids too, because we wanted them to understand that this isn't just mom and dad's church. This is our church,
Mm-hmm.
and it's their church. And so for them, as soon as they can get that, there's more ownership within that.
So you guys have brought up a couple of reasons why people may not serve, and I think lack of feeling of ownership is a big one. I think a misunderstanding of our roles is a big one. Um, let's just, if we can, just continue that train down. What are some other reasons that you guys have found that stop people from wanting to serve? I know for myself, I've had people say, "Well, if you asked me,
Right.
you know, fair point. Is that the right point to be making?" But that's a part of it too. Is people want that individual ask to step up and use giftings, but
It's not completely wrong, but it's not right. I mean, scripture doesn't say serve as long as somebody asks you to serve. It just says serve. It definitely helps to ask. And like you said, to give that personal invitation. But I think there's also a sense of, I kind of mentioned it, but somebody's already doing this. Like, for example, our deacons. We have, how many deacons do we have?
We have 5 teams of 3, so I think we have probably around 18.
it's good
Again,
math
not the
again.
right math, but we have some guys that are
Not
just
the math
fillers. So.
pastor. Yeah, but people see that and they go, okay, there's 18 deacons. That's plenty. I don't need to be a deacon. But if God has gifted you in that area, then you should still do it. There's no limit on how many deacons we could have. I mean, unless there
Correct.
is. Is there?
No,
Okay, then be a deacon.
no. I think the other thing too is the idea that a lot of people think I can only serve in a certain capacity, and so when they see people serving on Sunday, whether it's schedule limitation, they have young families, whatever, but to understand that there's so much that goes on within the church that they can help. I remember a friend of mine making all the signs in the CE building. That's serving. That wasn't done on a Sunday. That was done at home. And so there's a bunch of different ways to serve within the church body. I think the other thing too, and we're talking about, oh, I haven't been asked. Anytime you see in the Bible somebody serving is because they saw a need and they fulfilled it. And I think that's the big part is we have to be attentive to what's going on around us. And if we're just coming to church just to be fed, then we're missing the whole of what we're called to do. And so I think sometimes we're short in how we view church.
And we've spoken about this before, but can we talk a little bit about people who have the idea that it's our responsibility as pastors to be the ones who are serving, as opposed to the people, the flock of a church as a whole? I mean, we're not excluded from serving.
No.
But I think they're definitely, I had the same idea before I entered the pastorate that the pastors were the ones who did everything. So maybe we can address that.
I'll just flat out say there's no possible way for us to do everything that goes on. We can't.
Mm-hmm.
And if people don't step up, then certain things aren't getting done, and we're going to hear the complaints because those things don't happen.
True. Yeah, it's funny that I think of our donut ministry. We get donuts every Sunday, and there was a time when the people who were faithfully getting the donuts and standing outside and selling them, they weren't able to do it anymore. And we had the conversation of, do we just do nothing and let it die? Or do we try and find people? And my suggestion was just do nothing, and if somebody says, "Hey, I'll take that on," then it'll work. But that didn't happen, luckily.
Yeah, but if you don't have donuts, there's going to be an open revolt
I
on
know,
Sundays.
I know. Which in my thought was there will be a revolt for 1 week, and then somebody will say, "Fine, I'll do it,"
Mm.
which is kind of what happened. No, 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 no. That's not what happened. We had
No,
people who stepped up and said, "I would like to serve in this area."
we just identified people. We put
Yeah.
out little signs and,
Oh,
are
that's
you
right.
interested in serving? And
That's
then
right.
I think I took it on for a Sunday and Sean took it on for a Sunday, and we sat there, and everybody who came to the donut thing, we asked. And there was that personal invitation like, hey, you're getting a donut. Do you want to keep getting donuts? Because we need people. So it was a bit of that personal ask and
Yeah.
letting people know.
I remember one Christmas Eve, Rebecca, our janitor at the time, got sick, and I remember calling up Heidi and going, "Guess what we get to do today? We get to clean the restroom, so we're ready for Christmas Eve for the candlelight service." And so she brought the kids, and the kids were like, "I don't want to do this." And I said, "You know what? Truth be told, I don't either. But here's the cool thing: we get to serve God, we get to serve the people, and we get to serve Rebecca, because this allows her to go home, get some rest, and hopefully enjoy Christmas with her family." So there is that sacrificial aspect to doing it, because, I mean, the reality is we're all busy. But if we think church matters and what goes on here, then we're going to step up and fill those roles.
So ultimately, each one of our calling is to be a minister. And I think specifically in Ephesians, where it talks about pastors are the equippers, right? And the people are the ministers. It's kind of a tale as old as time. I think if you look back to Moses being over encumbered by the stuff that he had to do, you see the apostles in Acts getting over encumbered by the things that they have to do. And in every case, God's prescription through wise counsel or by dictation is to bring more people into the fold. You had mentioned there's no way that we would be able to fulfill every ministry that's happening at this church. I have a sinking feeling that that's part of something that stops a lot of churches from equipping and growing and having people serving in a bunch of different areas. I know for myself, it can be scary when you get to the point. Love Ramona is a great example of, we allowed it to expand and be huge to the point now where me and Pastor Sean can't run it by ourselves. We need other people to step up and step in. And there's a couple of moments where I'm like, I wish I hadn't let it get this big, because now I feel like I'm failing. And I wonder if that's not something that happens at a pastoral level when it comes to helping people to serve too. Think of our fresh food ministry. Let's be honest, if all of our volunteers ran away, it'd be really scary and impossible to try to keep that going.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen. So I think an encouragement for all of us is we need to be, like you said, understanding of our spiritual gifts, but also willing to step up in areas where we see a need, even if it's not in your gifting, to help make sure that ministry continues to happen. I think every single one of us on a weekly basis does something that's not in our job description.
Well, I think each one of us would agree too that there isn't a task or a job here at the church that is below us as pastors. We will do anything. And I think to a large degree, we have done a lot of those menial tasks that people will go, I don't want to do that.
Menial or tasks that we just despise,
but are necessary.
I mean, I don't like taking out the trash at home. I definitely don't like doing it here. But if I have to, right, I will. And if I see a trash can full, it's kind of in my head to want to do that. But I don't know that that is because I'm a pastor here so much as I think this place is important to serve at and serve the people here.
Yeah, you started by bringing up the example of Jesus, and he modeled service for us. But I think we need to have in our minds just a willingness to be inconvenienced for the sake of others, but ultimately for the sake of serving Christ and his church. And like you said, there's no task that I would look at and say, yeah, I'm the youth pastor. I'm not going to do that. I'll find somebody else to do it. I mean, sure, I might not want to, I might not enjoy it, but I'm not going to look at those opportunities and step away from it because that's not what God has called me to.
I mean, moment of transparency. I definitely have the thought first of I don't want to do this, and like
I have
I,
before.
I rebel against it real hard.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think the need exceeds that, right? You understand, like, yeah, I don't want to, but that need is still present,
Mhm.
and something has to be done.
Yeah.
I remember the old saying. It said, "I'm just one person and I can't do everything, but I'm one person and I can do something."
Mm.
And I think that's a good way to look at church. I mean, you think about the different levels of things that are needed for a Sunday morning. And that's removing everything during the week. But just a Sunday morning, I mean, we have the deacons that get the coffee ready and prepare the facilities. We have the worship team that is probably usually the first ones on campus.
And the
We
last one's off.
Yep. We have the greeters, we have the ushers, we have the welcome team, we have children's ministry. There are so many aspects of a Sunday morning. And again, that gives you a view into the fact that we, the five of us, cannot accomplish that. But it also gives you an idea of how many layers are needed for a Sunday morning.
So I just did quick math. For one service on a communion Sunday, we're sitting around 43 volunteers needed to, not paid staff, 43 volunteers needed to run a service, as
Wow.
I'm thinking through my head about the different ministries and stuff.
Is that accurate math?
I think so.
Okay.
Worship team, I'm thinking communion team, welcome, greeters, donut team, deacons,
Children's
elders who are
ministry.
here, children's ministry,
Ushers.
Wow.
ushers. Yeah. It's about 43 people if I'm doing my math right. I don't think about that. And that's the
Yeah.
heart of service. We don't have 43 people going, "Aren't you glad I'm here?" It's 43
Yeah.
people
Oh,
going,
yeah.
"I get to serve God today."
Yeah.
And you guys have experienced Sundays where you're not on like doing a specific task, and it's so cool to walk around and watch the church operate and not see each other at places where the church is operating at max capacity. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think behind that, though, is the mentality of what church actually is the gathering of people. Because it's very easy if we have a wrong perspective and we see the church as the building, as the pastoral staff, people who work there, then it's easy to go, this is your job, you get paid to do this. Whereas a correct view of the church says, no, this is my organization, this is my family, my church family, and I get to serve rather than why aren't you doing this? You get paid to do this. Because it's more than that.
So serving is not just a Mountain View thing, and it is something that is a call on every believer's life. So if you were talking to someone who's not currently serving at their church, which I think we've probably all had that conversation at one point or another, what's a piece of wisdom that you bestow upon them and or an exhortation?
I definitely think it would be an encouragement to get up and do something. I mean, even the Great Commission says, "Go and make disciples," right? That's a call to action. And that's what service is. It's a call to action. I also think if we're not using our giftings, I think it's a slap in God's face, because he created us for a purpose. And if we're not fulfilling that, so I would kind of, depending on the person I'm talking to, it would be a sense of encouragement. Like, there are so many different opportunities for you to serve. And some of them don't require a lot of time, but they're just as necessary as any other task. So giving them options as to what is available and say, you would be a good fit here. I think so that sometimes that personal invitation, but here's something that I see in you, and draw them to that, is one way I would go about it.
Yeah. I think also there's sometimes you just need to try stuff and
Yeah.
see what fits. I mean, you're not going to become a Christian and immediately go, "Oh, I see that God has called me to this specific ministry day one from being a Christian." It might take time and try a couple different things and find out what you really don't enjoy, and along the way find something that you do enjoy and that you can pour out in service, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I actually had a couple one time. They were trying to figure out their spot in the church, and they said, you know, we're going to try children's ministry. And after a couple weeks, they said, nope. And that's not a knock on children's ministry. It was how they were trying to figure out their niche. And I appreciated the fact that they were willing to try something and kind of check it off the box, like that's not our fit. So even sometimes you have to, like you said, I think that's a great point. Try different things until when you find your niche, you're going to know it.
Yeah. There's I just lost my train of thought completely once you said that. I apologize.
Well, let's run off of that then. What are some indicators that you are serving in a correct capacity in your experience?
I think you're feeling fulfilled instead of being drained. You go and you're like, I get to do this, instead of saying,
I think most of the time.
Yeah.
Because even if it is your
Yeah,
calling,
yeah.
you can feel drained sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be
But if it's a constant,
yes. Yeah, it should not be a constant feeling of I got to do this again. There should be an aspect of joy behind it.
Yep.
I agree.
yeah, there's certain times just leading a life group where Heidi and I will be at home and I'm like, I just don't feel like it. And it's amazing to me because those are the nights that I go and the group blesses me, and I walk out of there just jacked up because I met with people,
Yeah.
even though I didn't want to. I can say jacked up.
You can. That's
You
all right.
did twice.
Mhm.
You repeated yourself.
Yeah. What was your question? I'm sorry. I got
What are
totally
some
lost.
indicators that we are serving in a capacity that would be, as from the definition we're putting together, correct, or something that we're called to?
I think along with that not just the feeling, but we'll call it a feeling of fulfillment. If there's a need that needs to be filled and you are filling that need, that's an indicator as well, I would say. Even if you realize this is not my calling right now, but you are in a situation where you're filling a need and are able to find somebody to replace, I think that's okay in some degree.
Yep. Do you guys think efficacy or how efficient or how effective you are, do you think that is an indicator?
I think it definitely can be. Yep. But you also have people that are just adaptable.
Yeah.
So, but I think they're generally they're the only ones that are going to be able to say that's it. And it will eventually exude from them and go, gosh, we got you on the right seat. It's
Yeah.
neat. It's neat when people find their area.
Yeah.
Because they blossom.
How would you point somebody to find that who's not serving currently, whatever church they're in? What is a practical step you would give them to find where they can serve?
Well, on our resource page, we have the spiritual gifts test, and I think that's a good starting point to maybe understand. And we often not only have them fill it out, but we have somebody that's close to them, you know, a good friend, a spouse, somebody that can see, and because sometimes people see in us the things that we're not unaware of, or that we're not aware of. And so filling that out just to get a kind of an idea of how God has gifted us, I think that was always a good practical first step.
Mhm.
And then trying it.
Yeah, I think asking too. I know when people have come up to me and said, "Hey, where you guys need help?"
That's refreshing.
I love when
Thank you
people
so
ask
much.
that.
You're the best person I've ever met in my life. And there's a willingness to enter into partnership of discovering where God wants them to be.
Mm.
There's also humility there. But I think people don't understand necessarily that's a question we ask each other a lot on staff. As one of us heads up a project, you know, Workday, Josh is in charge of Workday. We show up and we say, "Where you need us, man?" We don't ask he doesn't ask us what we want to do necessarily. He just says, "I'm short here," and we go, "Cool, we'll figure it out." Cutting ceiling tiles and putting them up, moving rock. Like, I'm not a rock guy. We'll be out there with a shovel moving rock, and
I think I prefer rock to ceiling tiles.
yeah,
though.
ceiling tiles are the worst.
Yeah.
So if you have a passion for ceiling tiles, email me at john.viagrana. Boy, do we have a job for you.
Oh,
So I think that's one thing. I also think I found it, if I can stomach doing a job that I know other people hate,
Hmm.
I know that that's probably an area that I can be called to serve. I know there are people who hate being in front of people. I can stomach doing that. There are people who hate leading. I can do that. That probably means that it's wise for me to be serving in a capacity like that, whether it's my favorite thing or not. I found that to be a helpful question for myself as I look at giftings. Can I? Not do I want to, but
Hmm.
can I?
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for those people who are few and far between who will do just about anything and they will do it with joy.
Galen
And
Sells.
well,
well,
there's a number of them.
I know. He's just the
yeah,
first one who always
absolutely.
comes to my mind of, Galen, can you do this? Yep. Walks away and does it.
And then sets garden club up on the wrong day, unfortunately.
And then
was a
unsets it
sad
and then
day.
resets it
Yeah.
because he's the best.
Yeah.
And I think that brings up an interesting point too, because part of our job is to protect people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because, back to that 80-20, those 20% that are working their behinds off for the betterment of the church are usually doing too much. And those are the people we tend to want to clone and keep asking
Yes.
because they're proven. But one of our tasks is, one, to protect them and to draw other people out and into those roles.
I wonder then if it wouldn't be a wise discussion for us to talk about what IRTD is here at the church and how we utilize it. Because I think there's not just people listening to this that need to serve. There's people who need to help find people to help them serve. So would you mind talking about IRTD, Josh?
Sure. So IRTD, identify, recruit, train, and deploy. And so the idea is that you have somebody constantly within each ministry. It doesn't always happen, but what you're doing is you're on the lookout. So you're identifying people that could potentially fit within that ministry. And I think for us, we also identify for other ministries. It's not just, oh, I need them for mine. We want the best person in the best seat for that position, no matter if it's part of my ministry or not. It's part of the church. And then recruiting them. Hey, you know what? I've noticed XYZ, you're doing these things and you'd be great in this area.
I've noticed you got really big muscles and like to move heavy things.
Yes.
Deacon.
And then train them up. So even talking about deacons, we have, before deacons are affirmed, there's a training time. So they get to work alongside the other deacons to, is it a fit? Do I have the potential? And especially in that role, is it a calling? And then deploy. We've built them up to a certain place that there's a trust and a capacity that they can complete these tasks. And we go, power to you, because we don't want to sit back and micromanage every aspect, because again, we can't. And it's, if people are gifted in that area, I should stay away from it. So, I mean, there's that old joke about who should be involved in, painting a room. It shouldn't be the whole church. It's the people that are going to actually paint and interior designers. That's it. Everybody else, get out.
What about the people who put up the tape?
That's part of
That's
it.
the painters.
That's the painters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the people before the painters. I hate painting, but I don't mind taping.
But it's part of the process.
That's good to know.
That's what I meant. You've done that a number of times.
Too many times.
I clearly did not have you for painting this wall.
No, but that's okay. You did it on your own, and I'm proud of you.
Not side question. Where did IRTD come from? Because I've heard that since I got hired here, and I have no idea where it came from.
It's one of the systems that we have always kind of adopted as part of our training for our leadership teams. Its actual origins, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I mean, especially for just youth. That's my ministry. It's very easy to think in that process of, okay, here's somebody who could potentially fit for youth ministry. I don't know. Maybe they have kids in youth. Maybe they did youth at their old church, whatever it might be. But I love that we have this as a way to be a segue into just finding out. Just sit down like, hey, I've noticed, would you be interested in doing this, and going from there. It's definitely been very helpful for me, not just in my ministry, but in worship team and even deacons, whatever it might be. What you doing?
Looking up where IRTD comes from.
We'll cut it out.
No, that's all right. They know that Google exists. First, the only thing I can find is an HTD, which is hire, train, deploy. Comes out of recruit, train, deploy. And if I know Eric, he likes adding letters to acronyms that already exist. So I'm going to say
Very true.
IRTD. As we talk about IRTD, though, and its importance, I've found in my ministry, and you guys maybe can relate, that if I don't have a plan going into all four of those letters, they can fall apart at any point. So I found on the worship team that my weakest area was T. It's easy to find people. Hey, I play an instrument. Cool, you're identified. Hey, do you want to play with me? Cool, recruitment. And then what? Right? But I've also seen ministries where identify and recruit is super weak, so they never get to the training place. And I've also seen people who the deployment is a weakness of theirs, and implementing people into a system is a weak point. So they're trained and they're sitting and they're ready, but they're like, got no place for you right now. So how have you guys found a way to balance your IRTD processes for your ministries?
Train was definitely my weak point as well. And I think looking at it as equipping, not instead of training, I mean, same, it's a synonym, but equipping.
You know, if we change it to equipping instead of training, IRED is way better than
IRED.
IRED? That's a word.
Josh.
Dang it. No, it's not as good. It's an acrostic now.
Just makes it easier, folks.
No, but equipping was difficult. And so it took me having to sit down and go, okay, my job is to equip my youth leaders to serve and to love these kids, and identifying areas that needed to be shored up as far as communication and growth. And I think the training is the most personal aspect of the IRTD process, of getting to know people on a personal level in order to best equip them to serve in whatever ministry they're stepping into.
I think it's the most time consuming as well. Identifying is going, hey, you. I mean, right? Recruiting is a conversation.
Yeah.
And deploying is going, look, you have the gifts and we want you to use them. So I think that's part of it, is training is the most difficult. So within that, I think we have to be able to find other people within our ministry that are willing to take that on too. Because again, I can't do everything. I can't do all four aspects always. So trusting other people within the ministry is just as helpful of a tool.
So, and I think that's the mindset that we have of working ourselves out of a job. You know, if you are the only person who is trained to use IRTD in your ministry, you're probably doing something wrong. Everybody who goes through your training should be able to know at the end of it, okay, so this is what I'm looking for in people, and they should be IRTDing too, right? I always tell my people, you identify, you even recruit. I'll train it and I'll deploy, but you know, it's hard to do all four at the exact same time as one person.
Right.
So do you guys work that concept of identifying and recruiting into your training?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we keep using the deacons, but I'll continue to use that as an example. But you know, I continue to say, you guys are just as capable of identifying people and having those conversations, because there's people that you know and are comfortable with that I may not, and so it's another layer to that starting point.
I think what's cool about that is when you have people serving in the right spot, then the IR is easy for them. Like I've personally seen at least half a dozen of our deacons who love being deacons. And I just hear side conversations of, hey, you should join us. Like, you would be really good at being a deacon, and this is what we get to do. And it's super cool seeing these guys who love getting to serve.
And you get a
And
blue shirt.
yeah, inviting other people to join along with it, because
Yeah.
that's where they're gifted and where their calling is. So I think it's natural if you have the right person in the right place. It comes naturally.
I think it's interesting that I've never been identified or recruited for the worship team.
There's no coincidence behind that.
First of all, you're going to bring it up. I have offered to have Josh on stage no less than 400 times in the last 8 years.
I
But
will
not
say,
a part of the worship team, but as a ribbon twirler.
hold on. Okay, true. But also,
Which I would break a hip.
if you go on our YouTube channel, actually, no, Pastor John's YouTube channel, there's a video
He's
of
not on it.
4 out of the 5 pastors singing a quartet for Mother's Day. Where's Pastor Josh? He probably declined.
He's filming.
That was my
He was
gift
not
to the
filming.
congregation
was
in my
not.
absence.
I think you said that too, huh?
Yep.
So going back to our individual calling, is it, if I'm in a church, is it my job to wait to be identified?
Negative.
So I do think there's a certain level of identification that we can do ourselves to say, I think that's a good area, and pursue it. What do you think is an adequate amount of time? Because I've heard the excuse, well, I just got here. What do you think is an adequate amount of time for that excuse until it becomes invalid?
0 days. I think 0 days, because it doesn't, your location doesn't change where God has gifted you, I don't think. So if you're gifted to serve in hospitality and you move across the nation, or you move wherever you move, I mean, state, city, doesn't really matter. You get what I'm saying. If you move, your gifting hasn't changed. So you just apply that wherever you happen to be.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I think you shouldn't be sitting on the sidelines. And I think the other idea that we have to incorporate is the idea that I am the church. We are the church. So no matter where I'm at, I'm a part of that. And I can fulfill those duties and giftings wherever I am. So it shouldn't be like, I got to feel this church out. I don't think that's the right mentality. But I also know that it's part of a progression too, in the sense of where I originally started in my serving capacity is not where I'm at right now. So, but along the way, finding somewhere to do something. Because I think one of the first things I ever did in a serving capacity was greeting, which you'd probably be amazed.
Yeah, I would not have identified you for training.
No,
the training would be.
But it was a way for me to get to know other people, and it's not. I don't like being out there in front, but it was something that I could do, and I okay. So it has evolved since then.
Serving is an outward expression, I think, of a joy that we feel, and a appreciation and a cherishing of what God is doing in our lives and wanting to turn that back to Him. So as we are facing down Serve this year, I know one of the things we're doing is helping people to see the various areas in which they can serve, whether it's through ministries at our church or ministries in Ramona. We're also planning on partnering with all of those. So we have a lot of lawn cleanup coming up this weekend. It's not just going to be a bunch of people from the church. Pastors are going to be there, and elders are going to be there to help and kind of demonstrate that. But what else, Josh, is on your heart for helping people fall in love with serving or understand serving? What is kind of your heart for this year around this, do you think?
I think part of it is just that, first of all, an understanding of what it means to be able to do that, and to understand kind of where that root is. And that kind of goes back to in the beginning when we talked about Jesus coming and serving. Did he need to? No. Did he? Absolutely. And I think that's part of it, is understanding that that's part of being a believer, is the outworking of those things. And there was a fine line for me for a long time of going, this is something I have to do. And that kind of stayed for a while until it kind of started diminishing and going, I kind of like this. And now it's, for the most part, not always, I get to. And it changes everything in regard to how I relate to other people and the tasks that I perform. It changes everything. So my hope is that people will understand that and see how they are valued within the church and how they are needed within the church. And if they can experience that, nobody's going to get burned out. If the whole church did that, nobody's going to get burned out. We're going to have an abundance of people in every aspect of ministry within the church. So is that going to happen? I doubt it. But my desire is more and more people, because of us, because of word of mouth, kind of like what you talked about, of that fanning into flame, that fire and that desire to be a whole Christian and not just a tender.
Very much, I'm one person, I can't do everything, but I'm one person, I can do something. Yeah, if you're not doing something, you need to be doing something. Yeah, you kind of joked as we sat down. Just do it. There you go. Podcast over. But kind of legitimate. It's a lot like forgiving, and it's a lot like other commands in Scripture. Do it.
We should get off the couch and go do something.
Well, we're going to get off the couch and go do something. We hope, as always, that this has been a blessing to you. If you have any questions, you can contact us at podcast@nbcc.org. We'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to be praying for you. If you have any prayer requests, you can send them there as well. But thank you for spending this time with us, and talk to you guys soon.